floor is yours, Director Schimmer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much. We're pleased to be here with you this morning and with the public to talk about Franklin County economic development and planning's achievements in 2018 and our proposed budget for 2019. The focus of our talk this morning is the promise of public innovation. We want to focus in on that and talk a little bit about that as we kind of move along. My name is James Schimmer. I'm the director of the agency. I'm joined on my right by Jenny Snap, who is the assistant director, Alex Barris next to Jenny. Ryan Schneider is our economic development and planning fiscal administrator. The mission of economic development is to be the best county community and economic development organization in the state of Ohio through the use of innovative public policy and programs that make significant lasting contributions to enhance the quality of life of all of our residents here in Franklin County. We have 4 different areas that we're going to talk about this morning, and I specifically want Ryan to take us through to kick off our budget presentation by our requested budget, and I've asked him to take you through that. Ryan?
All right, good morning, Commissioners. This is Ryan Schneider. I'm the new Finance Administrator. So our recommended budget for 2019 is $16.3 million, with $11.3 coming from the general fund and the additional $5 million coming from our HUD grants that we receive. The majority of our budget is set aside for the grants that we do, as well as on our next slide, we recently went under a restructuring of our organization chart and who is reporting to who. So before you is our current organization structure. We are currently fully staffed now. We do have 22 staff members with 3 graduate interns. Then I'm going to actually pass this back to Director Schiff.
So with this proposed budget of $16.3 million, we'd like to support 4 specific major programmatic areas. I'm going to lead the first one with community development. Alex will take economic development, and Jenny is going to take both planning and zoning, as well as building services. So let me start out with community development. This is an incredibly important program for all community residents because the possibility that they may in fact use these services in the course of a lifetime is real. The key thing to know about this program is that it's funded with money from the federal government. For our audience today, it's money that comes from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. There are 3 block grant programs that we administer: community development, the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Program, and the Emergency Solutions Grant. We use approximately $3.36 million of that money, and a group of Franklin County residents, Community Development Advisory Board, actually make the decisions as to how that money gets utilized. We have, in 2018, supported 26 different programs that the CDAB, the Community Development Advisory Board, suggested to us. And those were in the areas of economic development, housing stabilization and improvement, public and social service support, rental rehab and new construction, emergency solutions grants. And those emergency solution grants are specifically dedicated to helping the homeless. I'm happy to report that in 2018, we had a number of accomplishments, but specifically I want to focus in on some of the details. One of which is that to administer the CDBG program, we have an administrative cost of only about 8%. So we are lean in that sense, and we have really been able to keep our costs down and make sure that the money actually gets out to the public where it's used the most. Our strategy of leveraging the leverage means that for every home dollar we get, for example, other groups spend upwards of $23. So for every dollar we get through a federal program, we're able to leverage $23. And that's a national leading indicator there, and we're very proud of that fact. Additionally, in community development, we also helped write the Continuum of Care's successful youth homelessness prevention application, and that brought $6.1 million to the county. And happily, with our partners, So Ryan, we will go to the pictures of the, there we go. We put in place 162 units of affordable housing in 3 different projects this year in 2018. Blacklick Crossing, Laurel Green, and Arrowleaf. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Alex. He's going to take you through our Economic Development Program accomplishments for 2018.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alex Barris, Assistant Director for Economic Development. We'll break this down, the Economic Development Division, into 2 sections. We'll start with the general funded SMARTWORKS suite of programs, and then also talk about our tax abatements and incentives programs. Obviously, as you guys are well aware, our SMARTWORKS program consists of 3 programming elements: PeopleWorks, which is a workforce development grant program; EnergyWorks, which is an energy efficiency loan program, revolving loan, and that's money that comes back in after it's been lent out and paid back, as well as Infrastructure Works, which is a county infrastructure bank, as well a revolving loan fund. Our key project in 2018 out of the Economic Development Division is Fortuity Calling. This is a PeopleWorks project. It's our largest PeopleWorks grant that we've ever given out, of $500,000, and that's to create 300 jobs in really a great social enterprise. It's a private business, but also social enterprise in Fortuity. And what that does is it allows for a step-by-step tiered grant program to offset the cost of training and onboarding, and also wraparound services for people coming off of social services to go from an entry-level job, but then take them through all the way to a living wage position. And that's a great project in Franklinton, along one of the major bus lines, and a real great way to revitalize the hospital there that left. Continuing with PeopleWorks, just quickly, summary statistics. We've awarded over $1.1 million of grants, but we've dispersed $273,000. That's accounting for the $500,000 for Fortuity that is just getting started right now, as well as, this is a performance-based grant. If until jobs are created and we see that, we don't outlay grant funds, and so that's the lag there. The jobs that have been created are 227, and cost per job is about $1,200 per job. So we're, in terms of metrics there, we're looking at that currently with our consultants, but we think that that's at least a good cost per job metric. Moving on, our EnergyWorks program coalesces with the county's work with the energy study for 2018. And one of the main goals of that county energy study that was done in cooperation with our Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission partners is a reduction in energy use in the county. And the EnergyWorks program does that exactly. It's an energy efficiency loan program. It pays for energy efficiency rehabilitation, but also new construction that decreases energy costs in commercial buildings that are job creating, revitalizing buildings in Franklin County. We've granted $4.5 million over the last 5 years to our partner, the Columbus Franklin County Finance Authority. That has been lent out and also leveraged with bonds from their own group to get $6 million, and then additionally there's been $3 million in private financing that's gone into those energy efficiency programs to essentially give you $9 million in energy efficiency financing. This is something that's really starting to ramp up, and there's a great pipeline of projects. I think this is something, commissioners, that we'll see continue to move along, not only with your support, but also we are starting to finally see the trickles of some other private capital coming into this market, which is more than great, and something that we wanted to spur in Franklin County. So that is the EnergyWorks program.
Is there, excuse me,
Yes.
If I could ask a question, between this program and, for instance, PeopleWorks or something like it, is there a training for pipeline positions to do some of that energy efficiency work?
We're looking at that right now because we think that there's now finally, before it was
Yeah.
just a couple one-off projects.
Right.
But Commissioner, and that's a great point, is that now that as we're seeing pipelines of maybe, in the future, 15 to 20 million dollars a year of this investment going on, that actually creates the scale to match a program, and it's something we are looking at in-house right now.
Right.
You're very intuitive as well, because one of the things that we're going to see coming up in 19 is a change in some of our funding for funders. And the ability to try and get a training program together is a real possibility.
Right.
Thank you. And finally, our Infrastructure Works program, which the Infrastructure Bank has lent out 6 infrastructure projects so far to our, and then this is specifically to our municipal partners within the county. A thing here, just once again to reiterate, this is a revolving loan program, and so in 2018 there was over $450,000 that came back in from repayments. Next year we project just under $700,000. So that's that program is revolving, and one of the great achievements of this program is that it's financed and still some people are still considering it for financing of the municipal fiber network in Franklin County, which, as we all know, is kind of a bedrock foundation of our smart city initiatives. If you don't have fiber connecting things, none of the other programs can happen from that. And then moving off of our SmartWorks, which is our general funded grant and revolving loan fund projects, quickly is our tax incentives, our tax abatement programs. This is the community reinvestment area, enterprise zone abatements, as well as, although we don't have any currently on the books, tax increment financing. Each one of these abatement agreements, we work really hard to have a good deal for the taxpayers as well as the business looking to expand. And as you can see, we have really outstanding numbers in terms of what we achieve. We're exceeding all our estimates and negotiated agreements in those for both payroll, new jobs, and capital investment. And how we do that is, and this is important to know, is that the commissioners appoint members, community members in the county to a tax incentive review council, and we report all of our projects to that board, and they review it, and we have some really great members on that takes that job really seriously. We have our companies that receive those abatements come forward, talk about their successes, their challenges. It's also a great way to get some insight into the county's how business is going in the county in general.
Before you move on, I'm familiar with the role of the Turk, but
Sure.
What are the requirements for the incentives? That we offer when we enter an agreement with a company. What are we requiring of them other than to make a job? Like, what is the detail of what that means?
So what that means, Commissioner, is it's not only a job creation, it's the payroll behind that, behind those jobs. So a certain aggregate, but also living wage component to it, as well as capital investment. These are both of those, the CRA and the enterprise zone programs are Ohio Revised Code ruled abatements, and that is what by law is the binding to that. We've also started to become more creative in this in terms of looking at the most recent, the Olentangy Valley Center redevelopment, where we're requiring affordable beds for senior living units and assisted living units. And so there's an ability to be more creative, and we're constantly thinking of that in ways to be unique in that standpoint.
That's good information, and I don't want to digress too much, allow you to do your presentation, but this is an important point because it came up at the editorial board meeting the other day, and that's how companies count temporary jobs often as permanent jobs, and there's sort of and I've been through this before when I was in the city of Columbus, where they can, it's kind of like, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's not a frog. But a lot of times the job can look that way in a temporary structure, but it's actually just what it is, temporary.
Sure.
But they kind of, so how do we address
It's-
that issue? Because it is a real issue with many of the companies.
Yeah, so the two parts is that whenever we're negotiating, we're not negotiating on temporary or construction or anything like this. This is permanent full-time employment, and then we back that by actual payroll or checking and things like that. And occasionally we do some, just to be honest in this, because we are concerned about that, Commissioner, is that we'll occasionally do some just back checking on names and calling and stuff, and just actually talking to real employees there and going, are you real? And that's one of the things we, one thing just to add on that is that a lot of times we don't do abatement deals with companies or developers or other things that might have track records of doing exactly what you say.
It's not always sinister on their part. Sometimes they'll couch it as using a third-party administrator to do payroll, accounting, and things like that. But effectively, it's a way that they can sort of get around it. And sometimes they offer benefits through the temporary service or whatever too. But it just has been issued, and it was brought up at the editorial board as something that they've been studying and looking at. And it's something I've dealt with a long time. It's hard because you've got, I don't think it's always sinister on the employer's part. Sometimes it really is a seasonal or way to handle a payroll that is unique for a circumstance. It doesn't mean those folks won't have other employment after that, just is kind of the way they count it.
Commissioner Boyce, it's a great point. I will tell you that you just used the word seasonal. For example, Rickenbacker is such a good example of that. That's a seasonal operation for the most part. When we do a tax incentive deal on a warehouse, the jobs are generally lumped together, even though they may be part-time from a year standpoint. It's not a full year's employment. It's 6 or 8 months. But it is something that I think is worth looking into and considering as we kind of move forward. Our deals have generally not been really enormous in terms of the number of payroll that we have, folks on payroll. But we have been really careful to look at the living wage issue and understanding what people are actually being paid. That came from you guys, and we understand that. So that's kind of a given that we're going to do that every deal that we look at for sure. The devil is in the details on any tax incentive. So for the general public, those folks that are tuned in today to listen to this, it's really important for them to know that the commissioners have required us as staff to have really excellent transparency. Good Jobs First recognized the county as being one of, I think, second in the nation for their transparency in 2016 in terms of how we go through a process. That process is controlled by Franklin County residents. And it is the Tax Incentive Review Council that you talk about. Our portfolio has really worked very, very well. But again, I think I'm going to mention this probably a little later in my presentation, is that we are paying attention to the details, and we pride ourselves on that.
And I think that's important as you look at getting a little bit more creative in terms of the affordable housing piece to that Olentangy Village project and others. I think we're going to need to be looking at those details as you do, which I think makes a huge difference. As I've seen that Turk operate in my tenure here, it's done a phenomenal job, and the people that sit on that Tax Incentive Review Council really take that seriously.
Commissioner, I'm glad you brought up the affordable housing connection, though, because that's really where I was going, is that it'll be important at some point to really link what you do with the work that Director Bivens is leading in the poverty conversation, because that's kind of one of the underlying conversations about what companies will pay in what we call a job created, and those kind of things, in how we sort of hold their feet to the fire. I agree with Commissioner Brown. You guys will do a great job of it. You got a great organization and a department. But as we link to this, as Commissioner Brown brought up, this affordable housing and other poverty-related questions, this is real connection work from a policy
Yes.
standpoint that we want to do.
And Commissioner Boyce, Commissioners, the thing that's happened over the last few years is that, the term quote-unquote straight economic development just doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it does in some places, but the reality of it is, and what I'm referring to is the idea that economic development is truly now a mix of community development, looking at job hiring and requirements for training and some of the things. And if 10 years ago, it wasn't really a big part of what we did, but now every deal includes those things. The idea now that we start to think about affordable housing near Rickenbacker to keep jobs close to where you live, it makes perfect sense. And as we go through our presentation here this morning, I'm going to talk about some ways that we're going to do just that.
Ryan, if you move the slide along. And so takes us into economic development funding distribution, commissioners. About half of that is to our partner organizations. That I do want to say really is the Columbus way, and this is how we get our economic development done in a very efficient but strategic manner, is having world-class partners help us, including Experience Columbus, Columbus 2020, Rev 1, the Sports Commission, Sister Cities, and then, of course, our SMARTWORKS and other grant opportunities make up the other half of that funding distribution. And finally, just to talk about something, because we are a performance-based unit, performance-based budgeting. We always are looking at deals done or projects done, but really one of the things we're doing in terms of enhancing metrics, although we do this day to day, but we want to record it, we want to use it as metrics, is the actual individual specific business retention and expansion visits we do in the county, and that would happen a lot in our unincorporated areas, but also in partnership with our municipalities, as well as individual, on the economic development side, individual economic development related infrastructure financing deals. We want to see and push that. Since I've been back, we've done quite a few of these visits, and it's like any sales process. The more quality visits you have, the more quality projects you get in the end. So thank you, and I'll turn it over back to Jim.
Commissioners, one thing I wanted to just highlight real quickly too is that we're also engaged on a global stage. And we had a couple of different events this past year I just want to mention real quickly. Commissioner O'Grady and City Council President Shannon Hardin led a group of private sector companies and folks from OSU on a trip to Spain, which was called the Experience SEVILLE trip to Spain. We did that with our partners at Greater Columbus Sister Cities. Lauren Rummel, who was in the Commissioner's office, was a big part of getting that particular program set up and working through that. Additionally, we had a intern who came to us from Madagascar. VEROHANITRA ANDRIAMBOLANORO was here for 6 weeks. She was part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. And I want to point those two different international experiences out because, again, our county is the largest in the state, and we need to actually be on the global stage. And we will continue to push for that effort. In 2019, proposing possible trips to Israel and Japan. So that'll be an important part of what's going on. I'd like to ask Jenny Snap now to lead you through the planning, zoning, and building services accomplishments for 2018.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and County Administration. I'd like to start out by saying that no other division in our office has as much direct contact with the public than planning, building, and zoning services. I'm proud to say that our office successfully implements every resident every day. I'll start my section of the presentation with planning, which includes both long-range and short-range planning, where community and intergovernmental relations is crucial in providing input in these processes. Land use and long-range plans are the policy foundations for development regulations and serve as a guide for elected and appointed boards tasked with making land use decisions. Two recent successful long-range planning processes include the Local Food Action Plan and the I-270 West Broad Street Interchange Improvement Project. In regards to short-range planning, our staff oversees over 20 permitting, review, and enforcement processes associated with federal, state, and local regulations, and coordinates 5 monthly public boards and commission meetings. You will see in the chart on this slide that we have received just over 600 planning and zoning applications in this year alone to date. These applications include zoning compliances, which are both residential and commercial, variances, conditional uses, rezonings, and major subdivision plats. Next, I'd like to talk about the Building Services section of Economic Development and Planning, which is responsible for the unincorporated townships, as well as the 6 contract jurisdictional villages, and ensuring compliance with the Residential Building Code of Ohio for 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. These building services include plan examinations, new construction building inspections, building electrical and HVAC permits, building condemnations and demolitions, court testimonies, preventative and complaint-based inspections, and technical assistance and consultations. Truly, the Building Services Division has the important task of ensuring the safety of all of our residents. Next, Commissioners, in the next slide, you will see development trends showing key indicators of economic growth and are reported nationally to gauge the health of the nation's economy, as shown here in Franklin County. I won't go through these statistics individually, but it's important to see the pattern of increases, especially post-recession, in the number of development processes, including lot splits, annexations, new homes built, and subdivision lots created. Many of the new homes being built and the subdivision lots that are being created are occurring in the northeast portion of the county in Jefferson Township. In addition, building staff will have completed nearly 5,000 inspections by year's end. These are completed by 2 full-time inspectors and a contracted part-time chief residential building official. Next, you will see from the slide that building staff will have issued nearly 3,000 permits with an estimated cost of construction of $98 million. In addition, these permits have brought in nearly $500,000 of receipts back into the Commissioner's General Fund. On to technology. On this last slide, I would like to address technology for all of these divisions. Our GIS, or Geographic Information Systems Department, provides GIS mapping consultation, website development, management, and data analysis services to internal economic development staff, local townships, members of the public, and other public and private entities so they can make informed policy and planning decisions and recommendations. In addition, our GIS department administers the online permitting and payment program through our internal SmartGov software system. Since its inception in 2015 to today's date, the software saw an amazing 148% increase of usage applying and paying for online permits. Commissioners, we strongly feel that this online permit system is customer service at its best. Residents no longer exclusively have to take off work, come downtown to find parking, to apply for and pay for building permits. And over the coming year, we would like to expand this service to our zoning division and provide similar services for permitting online. Here, I will turn it back over to Director Schimmer to speak to our 2019 goals.
Thanks, Jenny. Our presentation this morning is entitled "The Promise of Public Policy Innovation." And we really do believe that our department is a leader in policy innovation. But for our audience this afternoon, just what the heck is public policy innovation? And how can it benefit the citizens of, or the residents of Franklin County? By definition, innovation is the implementation of a new or significantly improved product, good, service, or program. Our program of work in 2019 will significantly improve our services and programs. We're going to do that in a number of different ways, and I just realized that I have a number of different initiatives that we have here, so I'm going to try and cut this down a little bit so maybe we can have more of a conversation about some of the things we want to do, but also some of the things that you feel are important that we want to talk about. But certainly one of the areas that we want to focus in on is we want to be the department within the county that leads the economics of affordable housing, and that will be to develop new models for funding while working with our partners on sustainable long-term funding models for more housing, especially as it relates to both urban townships and unincorporated areas of the county. Additionally, we want to work with the Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, the COCIC, and the City of Columbus, as we believe that there is a new model that we can put out and work with that is not only innovative, but it's practical. And that model is really the idea of creating a land trust. That land trust will allow us to actually build housing, affordable housing, that will stay affordable through time. And when I say through time, I'm talking decades in theory. And the concept is one that even if an area becomes hot in terms of absorption and pricing, these properties will remain affordable to the folks that will be in those areas. So we will engage in looking at the land trust, again, with the City of Columbus and the COCIC. We have and will continue to advance under Alex's leadership this concept of innovative economic development. To date, we have not used TIF as a mechanism very much within the county in terms of a county-generated TIF, but we're looking at specific targeted projects in townships that have the ability to use this funding mechanism along with the creative incentive structures that specifically are different for different areas. And so specifically what I'm talking about is a targeted strategic involvement in real estate development, and that's an important piece. And when I say that, we're already engaged, and Alex mentioned some of this with the La Tapatio grocery store project, which is located out on Georgesville Road. And what's interesting about that project is the fact that we are working closely and have worked closely with the engineer's office on issues of infrastructure that's needed out there and ways to fund that infrastructure. Mentioned also as well was the Olentangy Valley Center on 315 North. Additionally, we're waiting for the private sector to advance projects at Westland and Northern Lights so we can assess how we're going to participate and what the right way to do that is. And as always, one of the things that we want to make sure of in 2019 is that we don't forget the fundamentals of what we do. And that specifically relates to the idea of business development and job creation. Being out in the community one-on-one with companies and their owners will allow us to understand a little bit better about what direction that we're going in. I think we're fairly comfortable with that. And I also have this morning a news flash for everybody. Climate change is real. So I guess when I say that, I want to mention
I think that's only a newsflash for somebody that's not sitting on this panel.
Yes, I think that's correct. But let's just put that out there this morning, that climate change is real. And then how does that get translated to the average person? Well, amazingly, this past summer, if somebody was on I-70 going east, the exit on a national highway was closed, and then the exit to State Highway 310 in Pataskala for 3 days because the roadway was flooded. We're going to see more and more of that kind of event. And as a county government, it affects all of our departments, and we really need to be thinking about how climate change is going to affect our government. So one of the things we're doing is that we're working with the Mid-Ohio Planning Commission to adopt and internalize the principles of Sustainable 2050 because we believe that that's a county best practice that we want to try and facilitate as best as we can, and that's in the spirit of a resolution 68306 that you've already passed, which I guess is generally considered our environmental resolution. But that's good, progressive, looking ahead thinking. And we believe that there are also business opportunities in the process of being able to do that. Commissioners, a long-standing tradition of funding Rickenbacker as a job center has been something that has allowed us to have infrastructure currently in place to grow that facility. As you know, in 2018, we worked hard with MORPC, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and the Central Ohio Airport Authority to look at two plans, an inside the fence plan, but also an outside of the fence plan or a regional plan to understand where Rickenbacker is going to be in the next 20 years. For us specifically, the vision of a Rickenbacker alternative energy zone will allow us to have a competitive advantage when companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Walmart start requesting carbon neutral solutions to their future buildings. 80 million square feet of rooftop in the Rickenbacker area, and not one solar panel on any of it. We hope that we can help change that with the work in the private sector that needs to be done to get them to think of that. But again, the reason why we would consider that is to create a competitive advantage for Rickenbacker as we kind of move forward. We also want to push and rethink or innovate, if you will, some concepts about Rickenbacker development and push where we can and when possible to look at things like the need for changing a logistics monoculture in that area into a more well-rounded, quote-unquote, industrial park environment where manufacturing can also find a home as time goes on, and the types of jobs become more sustainable and more permanent in an operation like that. But Rickenbacker is certainly changing, and it certainly will continue to evolve and change as time goes on. But a critical component part of that is working with the private sector to get ahead of some of those changes. Additionally, we're going to continue to evolve our building and zoning operations. I think Jenny made a fantastic case for you that in this up economy that we have, and I'm not predicting that it's going to stay that way, but in this economy, we have really generated a lot of revenues through the process. 17, I think, was a historic year for building permits. 18 may be slumping a little bit and beginning to show indications that we might be weakening a little bit in the housing construction area. But nevertheless, how we do our business in that area, in the area that she rightly pointed out, where we touch the citizens of Franklin County, or the residents of Franklin County more so than any other area, we need to really understand how to do that better and to become more efficient as we kind of continue on. Continuation of the local food plan, work that Jenny has done on the I-270 West Broad interchange project, which is a beautification project. When you come in our front door on the west side, it needs to look good, and she has really been helpful to make sure that that specifically is worked out. We need to revisit the Southwest Area Plan for opportunities along with the City of Columbus to support the townships in their development needs. Anybody that has been along Frank Road will understand that that was one of the early industrial sites in the City of Columbus, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. Now, we will have to work with the city as well to make sure that some things are done there that kind of look at potential changes in land use. But that's just an idea. We're aspirational in that sense. And finally, we're going to make a pledge, and we do make a pledge to all Franklin County residents, that they're going to be directly engaged when it comes to EDP's promise of public policy innovation in 2019. Thank you for your support. We appreciate all of the help that you've given us as well. Literally, we couldn't be as innovative as we have been without your direction, the direction of your aides, who we really consider to be part of our staff, and Deputy County Administrator Janice, who has kept us with going forward with a steady hand. That's how I'll put it. And we've really appreciated his work, especially as it comes with the planning process that we have underway and will be emerging in 2019. With that, I'd like to offer up ourselves for any questions that you all might have.
Are there any comments or questions? I just have maybe a couple comments. You're my favorite department. And, so I said that to another department earlier, so.
We were listening, but you know what? We'll take it.
All right. No,
Must have been interesting when you were
Don't start, don't go there. But I will say, I think you're really creative, because you've got, I think you've got limited resources and a very complicated way to navigate, because you're interweaving with suburbs and large municipalities and townships and villages. And I think you really found creative ways to be effective with a really small amount of resources. And so I want to encourage you. I will just say that the work you do does connect with this poverty work that we're thinking, and I hope that you're fully engaged with Director Bivens in this process, because I don't know where it will end up, but on a lot of the things you highlight today are very direct links to how we come out of all of this with the plan. And so I just want to plant that seed because I just see a lot of connecting points. The other thing that I'd throw out, I didn't hear you, and maybe I missed it because part of the challenge with these presentations is that you'll start reading and I'll be following you, and then I'll zero in on something, and then by the time I get back out, you're 2 pages down, and so then you got to catch up, so you kind of get, so I may have missed this if you did, so forgive me, but I didn't hear you mention your master planning process that you're undertaking, and how that, because you don't know what the results are yet, how you're going to adjust with some of the priorities you've laid out for 2019. Did I miss that?
Yes, but the reality of it is that, again, 2-stage process, one of which was an assessment of SmartWorks, which you all asked us. The county administrator was adamant about doing that. That is fully underway, and I'm not going to say completed, but it is certainly where we need to be as part of the budget process. And, all right. But it has, I think, certainly the firm, Business Development Advisors, has in fact provided that information on the first phase. It's the second phase that gets to be looking out over the horizon a little bit more, and that's where I think the innovation piece comes in. And I saw Director Bivens just before this meeting, and she and I both agreed, and this was something that we've talked about from the very beginning, is that we're going to get our consultants together, and they're going to have a discussion. And we're also going to get our consultants together with Columbus 2020's consultants, who are doing their regional 10-year plan. And I think that's where we have unfortunately missed sometimes in the past, is that we haven't put the pieces together, the linkages together that you've talked about now. And so that's great advice. I will promise you that we are going to do that. Again, the changing nature of what we do as a department is illustrated just by that particular fact, and we understand that. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any more comments or questions? Please, Administrator Wilson.
Thank you, President Boyce, Commissioner O'Grady, Commissioner Brown. I agree that our team does an excellent job in economic development and planning, but I have a couple quick things I think that you meant to touch on but did not. What are our plans in 2019 as it relates to promotion of the retail economy? And that for quite some time you all conceived and we carried on the retail summit. But I've had discussions with you all about a potential reboot, or that branching out, going somewhere else. And my other thing I'd like to point out is it is critical that as agencies, and I know this is also on your radar, Jim, that we all collaborate, meaning the Board of Commissioner agencies, in our joint goals as it relates to economic inclusion and economic mobility, because our programs cannot in any way be successful if they're not aimed in some aspect of closing that wealth gap and looking at a diversity in entrepreneurship in Columbus and those that hold wealth within Franklin County.
I would agree. I think that integrating the work that you're doing in planning and development as it impacts our residents needs to be included. You need to be looking at ways to be as inclusive as possible, and you know that.
Yeah, I think we have a good sense of that. But going back to your first comment, Administrator Wilson, this is it's timely. We were successful in the retail summit, and so much so that the private sector has approached the Chamber of Commerce for the 2019 event. And there have been some active discussions, I guess is how I will put it, and they will continue this afternoon as to how we're going to look at this. Again, the key premise for what we were trying to do with the retail summit was to make sure that the residents of Franklin County understood how sales tax was generated and how it was used. It was an important piece. We believe we've met that mission now, and now we need to move on to some other important areas. And so specifically, what we're thinking about here is that working again with our partners at the Chamber of Commerce to be able to hopefully do just one retail event that will sum up everybody's interest. But then secondly, if we can't come to an agreement on that specifically, what we'll do is we're going to try and focus in on small business retail specifically, which we believe the Chamber has a role in and which of course we support directly. Secondly, logistics. The idea of electronic logistics now has gotten to be a big thing for us, and then fulfillment will be another area that we would like to be able to target. Again, as we always have done, we have been a niche player in the economic development arena when there is an issue that we believe needs to be addressed. In conversations with 2020, Don DePero and I believe that we can serve a niche for this specific area if we can't come to an agreement on a two-day, for example, retail summit that has more of the design aspect of retail in the first part of it and our program on the second part of it. So we're in conversations today, literally this afternoon, about where we're going to head. There will be a 2019 retail summit for sure. We will be doing that. What the direction is and how it gets put together, I think, is something that we will all have some ability to influence and go forward. So hopefully that's an answer to your question.
Yeah. President Boyce, Commissioner O'Grady, Commissioner Brown, I know you had a limited amount of time that I will take fault for limiting the presentations. But another important area that you guys have done great work in is in the area of local foods and that local food planning council, and now having a full-time staff person working on those efforts. And as we look at challenges in communities like the Linden community, I also would like you all to talk on that a little bit more, if I may.
Please.
Sure. As you know, we did hire a local food systems planner last year. He's been with us, I think, almost a year now, and he has been administering the local food board. As part of that process, I know they're working very closely with the small business community. I know they exclusively recently have done a lot of work in the Northern Lights area. As you know, the Kroger recently closed, so our local food systems planner has been out there and actually surveyed a number of businesses along Cleveland Avenue. He's been able to talk to them about what some of their needs are, what some of their strengths are, and we've put that into a resource guide. So that's just one example of some of the work we're doing to work with the local community. Another part of that is that now that we've had Alex on board, we've been able to merge economic development into those conversations. And I think that's the beauty of what we do well. We can talk amongst ourselves in community development, planning, economic development, and kind of change the way that we're doing business in our office. So I think those are important things to link up in this conversation with the local food action plan, and making sure the economic development portion of our office also has a voice in those conversations. Because what I've seen and heard in our office is that Brian will bring back important information that he's found when he's out in the field, when he's actually talking to some of these businesses and what some of their needs are, and bring that back to our economic development employees and talk about, can you outreach, can you maybe be able to talk to them about some of the services we provide. So I think those are important things that we're doing right now, and I think we'll continue to expand on those in the future.
One of the things there too, I think, is really important is our relationship with the City of Columbus in this process. We have a good working relationship. They've obviously done planning work in the Linden community that links back to the northern Linden area and to what we've been engaged in. What we have, an additional player I think is really important to mention here, is that the township has gotten more engaged as well. In that process, I'd like to think that we've actually been driving them in terms of what they've done and what they're thinking about. But, you know, ideally, the concept that we would love to be able to see happen is that Northern Lights is preserved as a retail location and as a services location. Additionally, that there is maybe seniors or affordable housing added to that area because it will help, the density will help support the surrounding area. And a third thing, I think, is that we could see small business growth and that we target that area as one of the places that literally becomes a retail incubator. The problem that we run into sometimes is that property is privately owned. We don't control the property. We can suggest whatever we want at Westland or at Northern Lights, but ultimately it's our ability to convince the ownership to try and make a turn that we really need to work on there. So.
Well, and our partners at the city, and all the work that we're doing with that, the food board and all the stuff that Brian's doing, you know, we take a economic development look or an angle as we look at the food plan. The city of Columbus, as much work as they're doing in the Northern Lights area and in the Linden area, the focus that they're doing, that they're taking there from their economic development department, their angle on the food plan is from Columbus Public Health and from a food security, or from a, you know, they look at it from a different perspective than we do, even though they're partners with us on this. And so while we have an economic development look at the food plan, they have it. They have a look. Their perspective or their world view of the food plan is more on a food security angle. And so while we partner with them, we have a different perspective on how we look at the food plan, administer the food plan.
Commissioner O'Grady, one of the things I'll mention, this kind of goes back to what County Administrator Wilson was talking about. I'll make this real quick, is the fact that we've had some great conversations with our own county health folks. Because again, sometimes it's difficult to link direct economic development with things like health and the opioid problem. And, you know, but the reality of it is that as a director, if I don't understand what Joe is going through and Joe doesn't understand what we do, we can't connect. And we've made an effort, both of us, to get together and talk about what our issues are and how we might be able to help each other in the future. And it goes with the senior folks as well, and you know, a number of different other county agencies.
So I guess I just try to make the point that when the city's, I'm sorry, I turned the microphone off. When the city's focus is access to food and our focus is economic development, there are two different approaches, but it's coming at it from two different angles, but it doesn't make for a different product in the end. It's just, you know, they're looking at it from the public health standpoint. We're looking at it from the economic development standpoint. It makes for, I think, a much better product based on the fact that we've got two different lenses to the problem.
Well, thank you for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I forgot to. Plan on saying it. Oh, he's got a jacked up microphone.